Welcome, listeners. I am so happy that you're here today. I have Carrie Hopkins-Doubts with me, and it's going to be a really fun conversation. We're going to get to know Carrie more through this episode. And Carrie she's a spiritual resilience coach. And I think she helps people a lot of times through life transitions or difficult times, kind of rebuilding after loss. So that's what this episode is about. Grief isn't just about death, it is about death, but grief can be about divorce, going through a different way of life. It can be a lot of different things. So, it affects us all, even if we don't realize it, even if it hasn't been someone close to us who's died. There are things that have moved and changed. So, Harry, welcome. I'm so happy that you're here. Can you just help us get to know you better and what
Sure.
led you to do this work?
Sure, Lisa. Yeah, this is such a great conversation. And like you said, not a welcome subject for a lot of people, but I love talking about this. I started out as a grief coach,
Mhm.
actually. I had, before becoming a coach, done all the training to become a marriage and family therapist and got into my internship and just decided this was not the career path for me. It was really too clinical, too much for me. I love therapists. I think therapy is great, but it just wasn't great for me. And then I decided to go into coach training and I got myself trained and certified as a coach. I thought, well, why don't I use this as my specialization in coaching? And so I started out doing that just because I'd lost my mom during the time that I was in the coach training
Mhm.
program,
Ugh,
and that was a big loss for me. My relationship with my mom was, let's just say, a little tense. So
that's
we
hard.
I loved her, she loved me, but we didn't get along that well. So
Yeah.
there was a lot of ambivalence in the relationship, that ambivalent attachment. And when she died, it really hit me hard because there was no chance for me to get the love that I was thinking I was
Yeah.
gonna get from her because the chance was over. So when I went through that and decided to focus on grief, I also found myself focusing on divorce because that was also part of my background. I was divorced in 1992, and that was one of the most challenging, difficult, painful situations that I'd been through at that point in my life. So I found myself working with people going through divorce, through bereavement, through job loss, any of these things where there's an ending of some normal part of your life and where grief will come in. It's really important just to have somebody to talk these things through. And then about 3.5 years, my second husband died suddenly.
Ouch.
Yeah. So it was not only, okay, I'm certified as a grief counselor. I know the territory, I know the maps, but I got to walk the territory this time, and sometimes on my hands and knees. It was incredibly painful. And to this day now, fast forward to today, worked through my own process using my own program and also the help of my own coach. And I really adapted to and created a life that I love on the other side of that huge loss. So I'm still working with people in those arenas, but I've recontexted the work that I do, calling it spiritual resilience, because that's what we're really going for to
Mhm.
know yourself as capable, creative, resourceful, and whole, even when you're going through grief and loss.
Mhm.
So that's my story.
One is if you have a parent that passes that maybe you didn't get along with, there's still grief there,
Oh, yeah.
you know? And then the other, I have someone really close to me I have several people who have lost their spouse.
Mhm.
And I really want to help people who go through that. And, yes, you lose them in divorce and death, however that works. But I know in particular, this one that's very close to me, I think she has just come to the conclusion, she's handling it. She's gotten therapy, which I
Mhm.
love.
Mhm.
I do want to say the difference between therapy and coaching. And I think therapy is so helpful and we all need talk therapy now and then. When I think of coaching, I think of as moving forward of how you're going to maybe change things in the future.
Mhm.
She's a little bit older than me, and they were very, very close. And I don't know that she has a lot of hope for the future. I
Mhm.
think there's a lot of feeling like, well, I'm kind of looking forward to being there with him at
Mhm.
some point. And I don't know, maybe that's okay and maybe that's normal. Man, I sure would love to see her happy, joyful. And I know with grief, I think I understand, Carrie, that we always carry it with us. It's
Mhm.
always here. It's that little piece that's there, but you can still find
Yeah,
joy. And yeah, you're changed. And yeah, there's something different. And you know that that loss is there. I can go and enjoy things as well. Does that sound right?
absolutely. And ho it depends also on the amount of time that has passed between the person's death and now, because
Mhm.
it does take time to process through this. We can still hold that person in our hearts because they'll always be there. You know, the
Mhm.
love that we felt for that person, we can feel it still. You know, I still feel that for my husband.
Mhm.
It's not in the here and now and in the present, and it is important. You said something very important. We want to start moving forward in our lives, not moving on. You know, a lot of times people say, "Oh, I feels disloyal to move on," because that almost signifies that you're leaving them behind. You're
Mhm.
moving on without them. And so I say, no, we move forward, sort of adapting to the loss and incorporating the grief into our lives because, like you said, it doesn't go away. It
Mhm.
will show up as a grief trigger. All of a sudden, you hear a song that you used to love, or, you go to a restaurant. It's like, oh, yeah, we used to go here. I haven't been here. Just we get a memory triggered and then the grief can wash over us again.
Mhm.
So it's sort of, I am not surprised when that happens. I just take a breath and it's like, oh, here's grief again. It's okay. Just take a breath, just cry my tears, do what I
Yeah.
need to do to take care of myself. And then, I pick myself up and I rebuilt my life
Mhm.
after that great loss. And I moved from we lived in Arizona. That was the place he wanted to retire. After he was gone, it's like, I don't wanna live here. So I moved back to the Los Angeles area, and I'm right around the corner from where my daughter lives. And
Nice.
so, I've created a new life for myself and one that I love.
Yep, that's fantastic. And so I kind of want to, as I'm sitting here listening to you, I want you to help me if we can. I know we don't have a lot of time,
Mm.
but can we talk about, okay, so in the beginning stages, when this is brand new. Now, the friend I'm telling you about, it's, over a couple of years,
Mhm.
right? Which who knows? We're all different. I don't know how long it takes.
Yeah.
But I know I understand that there has to be a time where you have to sit, and what I love that you said is that you'll get a wave of grief and you sit and you feel it.
Mhm.
I don't know if this is normal, but I feel like I would run away from those feelings all the time. Like, oh, I can't feel this way now. Because we don't want to. Ick. Who wants to feel
Who
that?
wants
So just for the audience to realize if you're like me and you run away from those feelings because you don't want to feel them, they are going to be worse or come out a different way. So
Yeah.
feel them. Feel them. And then it's almost like they can dissipate. I
Mhm.
know sometimes it's hard if you start reeling in it, that's where you can kinda have issues, but, okay, so what I'm kinda thinking of, let's go through some stages, like, if someone's brand new into this, brand new
Mhm.
into a loss. I mean, I know when I've gone through something hard, I sit and cry
Yeah.
for days, and I
Yeah.
think, I don't know, even when my oldest daughter went to college, I was like, "I don't know if I'm gonna get over this."
Yeah.
But what do people do in the early beginning stages of either divorce or death or diagnosis that scares them and whatever it
Right.
is?
Right. Well, that first stage is exactly, it's the first step in my Rebuilding Your Life After Loss program, which people going through divorce, people going through bereavement, all kinds of people take this. It's a program just designed for grief, no matter what the context. But the first step is creating a safe space, a safety net for yourself to feel, to heal your feelings. And I shouldn't say heal your feelings because we don't really heal them,
Mhm.
but we experience them, we bring them in, we welcome them, say, "Oh, here's sadness.
Mhm.
Sadness is here." We feel it, we name it,
Oof,
so it's really
yes.
important to name it. A lot of times people, just slowing down and naming it helps the brain sort of integrate what's going on. So you feel it, you name it, you express it. And so that's where a safe other really comes into play. You need a place, a person, a vehicle for you to express that, safely without any judgment, without people needing to fix you, without people needing to minimize your feelings. Often a coach, or sometimes it's just a trusted friend, maybe somebody who's gone through something like
Mhm.
this, and they know how to companion with you and just be there for you while you express it all. And so that's a very important first step because, like you said, Lisa, if you don't do this, if you try to shove it away or avoid it or numb it or do all those things that we do, it's not going away.
Mhm.
So, what it will do is it hangs out in our subconscious, our unconscious, comes up in these really overblown reactions that we have to life, where, road rage, something like that. It also can go into the body. So it can go into the tissue of the body and somaticize, become illness.
Mhm.
There's lots of research about unresolved or unmet grief can lead to a person's illnesses. So
Mhm.
it's really important, like you said, to have a safe place, a safe container to feel, to release these emotions. And
Yep.
like you said, once you've released it, once you've really given it that safe space inside of you, like you invite it to tea, like come sit
Mhm.
down, talk, what have you got to share with me? It has a message for you.
Mhm.
And then once it's delivered its message, it goes on. And then you have the next feeling, whatever that is.
Right. Okay. You said that is the first step to your rebuilding steps. How many steps do you have?
I have a 9 step process.
Boy, I don't know if we're gonna be able to get through
Yeah, we probably
everything.
won't, but that's okay because, even just the first few steps is an important, it's just realizing, bringing awareness can sometimes be all you need.
Mhm.
So
I
just
know, yes.
just knowing that first step is I really need to create a safe space for me to feel all of these feelings.
Yep.
Grief, it's gonna bring them all. It's gonna bring, sadness, hurt, anger, relief. We have so many feelings,
Mm.
and they're all normal.
Yeah, and I wanna say, and this on my divorce, I have LisaKoski.com.
Mhm.
If you wanna go there, I have a feelings wheel, and
Oh,
sometimes I look at that so you can grab it there, that you can probably find them online too, but sometimes if you're having
yes,
trouble naming it, that can be helpful.
that's right. When people say, "Well, how are you feeling?" And their answer
Yeah.
is, "I feel good."
Right.
It's not a feeling. That's a
And
link.
okay,
Yep.
so that's the first step.
Mhm.
What's number 2?
Second step is creating capacity through what I call radical self-care. Because when you're grieving any kind of loss, often if you are having to help your kids through this as well, say with a divorce, or, you're now a single parent, where you had the help of your spouse before in raising kids, it's often so common, really, for you to neglect your own self care. And so we start to talk about, well, how is grief affecting you on the physical level? A lot of times it's, I'm not sleeping well, I'm not eating well, I'm not exercising, I'm not doing all those things that we all know we should do to take
Mhm,
care of ourselves. But what people don't recognize is if they don't take care of themselves first, they don't have the capacity to take care of others.
mhm,
It's like putting your own oxygen mask on first before, like they say on the airplane, all right? You have to have
mhm.
your own oxygen before you can help other people.
I think that is something that we all know, but that we rarely do.
When you're grieving, you're even more physically depleted than you would be normally.
Yep.
And
So,
then we forget, to take
yep.
care of ourselves.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay. Third.
Yeah. Third is making peace with the past. And so when we are sort of unpacking what has led us to the present moment where this person, either through a divorce or bereavement, is no longer part of our lives, it's going to bring up some of the memories, the things that were unresolved in those relationships. And this is where we really slow things down and look at that. What judgments am I holding against that person or myself? And this is where we get free of these limiting beliefs that we've got going on about the nature of relationships, the nature, it's like we make up meaning about, well, I guess I'm just not cut out for marriage because I failed at it 3 times, whatever.
Right.
And people really hurt themselves by hanging on to these untruthful beliefs about themselves. So we really take a look at the past, not as a way of ruminating about it or anything like that, but just to look at the dynamics that perhaps maybe created the relationship issues that you were having. Sometimes also it's helpful in a divorce, but also when somebody passes, for instance, for myself, looking at all the judgments that I held against my mom and myself and
Mhm.
forgiving myself for the judgments I placed against her, that I placed against myself as not being a good daughter, not being a good enough daughter, all of those things. So we really free up a lot of that energy that has gotten stuck in the past.
I remember hearing people telling me that sometimes you can remember them as perfect, perfect in every way, and not really see them how it was. Is that anything?
Yes, that's really smart. I like that you brought that forward because, you know, if you've ever had children
Mhm.
and you go through childbirth and then, you
Yeah.
have this baby and, oh, it's so wonderful and you forget about all that. But that's what our minds do. We tend to minimize or forget the painful things. So that's often what happens. You also enshrine this person.
Yeah.
Yeah, put him up on a pedestal. He was the love of my life. She was the only one for me. And you're right. It's like we have forgotten about the fights we used to have, or that this person wasn't perfect. So it is important to be honest in your looking back in the past. And, it's like, well, this part of it drove me crazy, but it doesn't, if you enshrine that person, it really makes it difficult to move forward in any other kind of intimate relationship
Yeah.
because you feel like it would be a disloyalty to that
Yeah.
person.
That's interesting. And I'm thinking, even when I think about my grandpa,
Ah,
he was a king. He was perfect. Now, maybe that was okay that I
yeah,
felt that way when I was young. And then as I have grown, I can see that there were things that he did that were amazing and great, and that's okay. And
yeah,
I can still love him. But I wondered how that would play in if you, for future relationships, if you did have them on that pedestal, you can still say, hey, I'd take him chomping his gum in my ear in a second, but
yeah.
that it wasn't all just to be real.
Just to be real, you know, uh, when we shine a light on something and then we put that spotlight of perfection on somebody, we're forgetting that there's shadows. There's going to be
Yeah.
shadow, you know? And so it's really important that we look at somebody with the light and with the shadow, that we look
Mhm.
at ourselves with the
Yeah.
light and with the shadow, because often what we will do if we find that we have objectionable traits or behaviors that we don't accept about ourselves, we can project them onto that other person.
Mhm.
Similarly, we can do a positive projection. We take all the things that we haven't owned about ourselves that are really wonderful. "Oh, this person was so smart, he was so gorgeous, he was kind, it was like" and these could be unowned aspects of ourselves that we're projecting onto that person. We're not seeing the person as they truly are or were. We're seeing our projection. So that's part of what we look at in this 3rd, phase of the program. We look at owning and accepting those projections and bringing them back home and go, "I sometimes treat myself like this too," if it's a negative projection, or I treat other people like that.
And it's interesting because isn't that unconditional love? Is loving their shadows too?
Yeah. Unconditional love is not easy to do in a
No.
relationship. That's the spiritual level of unconditional loving. The loving of the universe, of God, whatever people's spiritual beliefs are, that's where unconditional love is. But we have conditioned love in relationships. But the more that we can do our own work in relationships, whether it's a current relationship or a past relationship, the more that we can own our own stuff and take responsibility for it, the more that we can have happy, really productive, and loving relationships.
Now. Yeah.
Now, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So good.
yeah.
So
So
good. And so I'm looking at the time, Carrie. I can't
sure.
believe like I'm actually
Oh my
talking.
gosh, look at that.
I know, I think I'm talking more than I usually do. And this is what I'm wondering.
Yes.
Would you come back on?
I'd be happy to.
And then we could talk about so did we get through 3?
We got through 3, because
Okay.
that's really a good place because that's setting the foundation
Okay.
for what's next. And
All right.
I won't say what's next then.
All right.
So
Well, we'll be sitting here anticipating what's next, and I'm gonna see if I can get us scheduled here when we're done on this, but I just have to I so appreciate this, and I got lost in it because it was so fun to learn from you, so thank you. Thank you for going through something hard and using it to help the world. It's such a blessing, and I want you to know that I see that, and I'm very, very grateful. So, and then Carrie, if our listeners want help from you, we'll have your information in the show notes, but
yes.
how's the best way? What's the best way to reach out and work with you?
Oh, the best way to reach me is my company is called Life's Next Chapter Coaching, and that's really what we're doing is we're creating your life's next chapter after whatever you're going through is resolving itself. So they can reach me at Carrie at Life's Next Chapter Coaching. They can visit me on my website. There's lots of resources. There's information about my Rebuilding Your Life After Loss program. And so, yeah, that's the best way to reach me.
Wonderful. So, listeners, if you need a little help in this area, at least go look at those free resources or reach out to Carrie. So, Carrie, I'm so excited that you're going to come back and thank you so much for being here.
Well, Lisa, thank you for this great conversation and for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. You take good care.
Yeah, you too.